Survive in advance, they say. Purdue played some bullies in McNeese State here today, but they were the bullies on the block. Your Purdue Boilermakers are heading to the Sweet 16 once again. We're talking about it all on Boilers in the Stands postgame show starting right now. Let's go.
It's Zach Eady with Purdue men's basketball, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Welcome back to the Boilers in the Stands post-game show, Sweet 16 edition. I am your host, Kraig Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is Joe Jackson. Craig Bowers is lucky enough to be in Providence right now as your Purdue Boilermakers take down McNeese State here in the first game of the round of 32, and they are now heading back to Indianapolis to take on the winner of Houston versus Gonzaga, which will play later tonight. Couldn't be more excited for this thing. Hit the like button while you're hanging out here. We're gonna have some fun. This, I'm sure, will be a longer post-game show, and we'll have some time to celebrate as the games still have a little bit of way to go before they really start bunching together and getting underway. So we got a little bit of breathing room here, Joe. Give me your instant reaction here, man, because you know what? We talked about this at the end of the season. They lost 6-9. It was a rough feeling. Not sure how they were going to, play in March Madness. They get, mollywopped by Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. And you're like, man, well, as we said many times, it was going to be about matchups and how this thing laid out. They were lucky enough to be put in the Midwestern region of all this thing. They were lucky enough to play a team. There hasn't been many upsets in this tournament. McNeese State upsets Clemson in the first round. Clemson was a team that once took down Duke earlier this year. McNeese was outmatched versus Purdue from the start. And you got to give the Purdue Boilermakers a lot of credit because of the toughness they showed. A lot of hype around McNeese State. They had the juice. They had the energy. They had the aura with their boombox guy. Their team manager getting a lot of love, and hey, all love to them for the run they made. But Purdue, I think is starting to show a little bit of that national championship moxie, as I talked about in the first game against High Point. And they didn't give McNeese State any breathing room here today.
Yeah, this is a game where, right, when we came into the post or this tournament, and I've kind of been like, hey, at this ceiling, this team can make the Final Four. Now, they're going to have an incredibly tough matchup either way in the Sweet 16, but right, it becomes a whole new ball game once you get into the tournament. It does not matter what you've done. Once you have your seed, once you have your matchup, it does not matter whatsoever what you did for the previous 31 plus games. It matters what you do for the next one. And if you win, what you do for the next one. You just keep stacking them. And Purdue has now done that. 2 wins in a row against 2 teams that was, the quote unquote trendy upset pick, right? And I know some of that's just kind of the Purdue narrative that gets baked in. But Purdue did an awesome job today, just throwing the first punch and never really letting up. I know late in the second half, McNeese, kind of whatever, it was never, ever in doubt, though, in the second half for the most part. Just really, really good to see Purdue. My biggest key into the game was Purdue just needs to maintain composure. I thought they did that throughout the entire game. Obviously, McNeese is the team. They get 2 technicals. This is a team that has athleticism, and Purdue just shut them down just from the jump. Yes, the offense was clicking early, but the defense was so good, making McNeese take a bunch of tough shots. Now you're in a spot where you're in the Sweet 16, and right? If you just got to go win one more game, and then you're in the Elite Eights, and then you just keep doing that over and over. And I understand how you're playing going into the tournament can matter to a degree, but we looked last year, and shout out Christian. I'm going to shout him out, my guy Christian Oj Hoops. I was listening to, he was doing a live stream before the first round and mentioned right? Clemson last year, they made the Elite Eights. They beat New Mexico, Baylor, and then Arizona, and they had Alabama on the ropes in the Elite Eight to go to the Final Four. They lost 3 of their last 4. 2 of them, or one of them, was at Notre Dame. They lost first round of the ACC tournament to Boston College. Neither of those teams even sniffed the tournament. But if you can show at some point during their year, like, hey, we have this ceiling, we just got to get back to it for this 6-game stretch. Purdue's done 2 of those games now, where they get back to a little bit more of that ceiling type thing that we saw from January, little early in February. Man, just good to see. Really good to see Purdue dominate as they should from the jump. Purdue was the better team. McNeese is a fun team. Credit to them for getting to this spot. Right. And this wasn't a game that you could just walk in and be like, oh yeah, Purdue's going to for sure win by 35. But at the same time, Purdue flexed and showed, all right, no, we're the better team. We are going back to Indy.
We are indeed going back to Indianapolis. So I wasn't really anticipating an opportunity for myself after just having knee surgery. I didn't really put in for credentials. I was going to let Joe and Kraig handle that here for this tournament. Probably going to go in the stands as a fan, back to my roots here for next weekend, as now we're going back to Indy, back to our home roots, back to a stadium that we play in. We, as in the Boilers, every single year.
Well, it's in Lucas Oil.
It's in Lucas Oil. That is an interesting, distinction there, as you normally play at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So thank you for that correction there. And, Purdue played there, a few years ago when the entire tournament was in Lucas Oil, which was a pretty wild, kind of scene there. That was when COVID started to let up, and they had the entire tournament there, and including the Big Ten tournament as well. So there's a lot of different variables than Gainbridge Fieldhouse in that regard, as far as backdrop and everything else. And we'll get into that here as we get into next week, as we're previewing who they eventually match. As I said, Houston and Gonzaga will play here later tonight. We get to enjoy 2 full days of basketball. We didn't have to wait all day. Painter talked about this. He's like, you want to play early. You don't want to play later, because it becomes torture in these tournament games. You're waiting around. And also, when you're the first game, of a 2-game set, now St. John's is about to, tip off here. Well, they don't get their normal, warm-up routine. Purdue had all morning to get ready. And I also think, just from McNeese's standpoint, as a energy vibe team, waking up in the morning and busting out the boombox and everything that kind of is what their identity has been in this tournament. And I know their identity really is about toughness on the basketball court and creating turnovers. And they certainly did that in points today. I will say this too, when you talk about the narrative that is Purdue, they said it at the end of the broadcast, and I don't think fans realize this. I certainly was a little surprised by this stat. This is now 6 in a row for wins in the round of 32 to get to the Sweet 16. 6 straight wins for Matt Painter and your Purdue Boilermakers. And so I think that shows something. When you start the tournament, there's the nerves and everything else, and you're playing some teams that, might be their first time ever being in the tournament. And there's just a lot of variables that come into play. But then you get your feet set. And on top of that, you have a shorter turnaround to prepare for that next opponent. You're going to do a little bit of advanced scouting, but you can't really do all that much, because you're focused on the team that you got to beat that's in front of you. So you really only get a day to prep for that next team. And really what it comes down to is you start to really just prep yourself more than you can ever really do to overly scout the team across from you. What can we do better as a team? And so when you looked at what Purdue here did today, right from the jump to go into TKR, they weren't, bracketing TKR at all. And they took full advantage of that, going right at them. And we all know that, with a lot of teams with Purdue, it's how they go, how their 3-point ball goes. And they hit 11 threes here today. And I know they ended up winning by 20, but every 3 felt like a big dagger moment. Any moment that this team, McNeese State, had an opportunity to even try to build some momentum, it'd be CJ Cox or Braden Smith or Fletcher Lawyer or Miles Colvin, Cam Heidi in the corner, knocking down big threes, where it just time and again, any moment that McNeese even had the thought to try to come back into this game, the 3-point would just remind them this ain't happening. And for us as Purdue fans, like, I think a lot of people that might be watching Purdue, like, oh, of course, it's McNeese State. And we get that. They should have beaten them the way they did today. But at the same time, when you lose 6-9 to end the year and you're blowing double-digit leads time and time again in each of those losses, for Purdue to collectively step on their throat. Now, they really could have won by 40 in certain terms. Jenny, my wife, at one point, she comes downstairs in the second half and she's like, how's it going? She like kind of says it hesitantly because all I was doing was swearing at the TV because I want blood. I want this team to drop a 40 burger deficit on this team. She looks at the screen. She's like, they're up 19, Greg. I'm upstairs. I think it's like a tie game. I'm like, that's because they were up 26 and then they got it down to 15 and they're screwing around and they're turning the ball over and da. But like, that's just who we are as Purdue fans. Like, you don't take any lead for granted.
Yeah, I was watching with my girlfriend and when I think they were up 21 with 10, 12 minutes left, I just looked at her. I was like, hey, are you comfortable with this lead? She's like, no, like not yet. Like any other team, maybe, but not with Purdue. Like you said, there's just the inherent, and then I'm sure every fan base.
And you didn't send the text communication of like when we were going to start the post-game show until there was like 7.5 minutes left because we were like,
exactly.
There's no jinxing going on here today.
Exactly. But no credit. I mean, just credit the entire coaching staff. I thought PJ Thompson did an awesome job scheming up open looks right from the get-go. I thought Painter did a really good job at just hitting the right buttons with the rotations of bringing in Heidi. And then towards the end of the game, when you just kind of need to run the game out and just kind of not stall, but run the game out, handle the pressure, he goes really small with Miles Colvin at the 4, and then obviously Braden TKR and 2 ball handlers, whether it be CJ, some combo of CJ, Jakari, and Lawyer. I just thought from the get-go, it felt very much like Purdue. It felt like Purdue was as prepared as you possibly can be on a 48-hour turnarounds against a McNeese team that plays junky type defenses and really tries to heat up and turn the pressure on against teams. And we saw them run a 1-3-1 zone that morphed into like a 3-2 zone. We saw them press. We saw them really collapse on TKR and take that away. And Purdue kicks out for threes. We saw, TKR set down screens and immediately seal and get great post positioning, and they fired in. Highlighted by Lawyer had like I forget. It must have been the first half, but he threw it felt like a 30-foot like post entry pass just on the money because TKR just had his dude sealed. So just a great game all around. I know there's some comments about like, hey, clean up the last 10 minutes, and yes, yes, but also I am under the belief for every game that's where you're up 20, 25, especially in a single elimination like this, things just get weird down the stretch. So like, yes, clean that up a bit, but also you're playing such a different style at that point.
Yeah. And I get that. But at the same time, like, hey, this is the tournament. Like, let's keep our focus, gentlemen. And I'm sure that'll be partly the message. I mean, at one point, Painter threw his hands up after like the 4th turnover in a row. And it was interesting because with 16 minutes to go or so, McNeese State had enough. They were waving the white flag. They were beaten by Purdue, and they knew it. Their head coach gets a technical foul. Then one of their players gets a technical foul at the exact same timeout. I think the head coach for McNeese State, Bill Wade, was about to get a tech as they were running up the court before the timeout of play. The ref kind of turned around and warned them during the transition from the other end. And you could kind of see that on the telecast. And then when it got to the timeout, the head coach chooses to get a timeout. Then the player follows along suit and gets one, or a technical foul, I should say. Then the player follows along suit. Now they get 6 straight free throws when they're already up 20. They make 5 of 6. And McNeese State, even at that point, was starting to show a little bit of fight. And yet then when the TKR foul happens, he goes to the line. They were done. They were like they were just so frustrated. And help me out with the player for McNeese State that got 4 fouls, like Copeland. Yeah. I think he kind of embodied all of McNeese State today. Guy transfer from Syracuse that just could not get going at any point because he just kept trying to do too much and drawing fouls and stuff. So I'll just say this. What we saw here today in the last 2 games, is to me everything that we were hoping for this year's Purdue basketball team. You're seeing Miles Colvin and Cam Heidi come into their own And maybe that's a little too, for some, it took a little too long. Well, nobody's complaining now. This team's now in the Sweet 16. You're seeing Jakari Harris. You're seeing CJ Cox. You're seeing Will Berg make an impact here. How many Purdue fans were ready to write Will Berg off and send him packing and try to get somebody to replace him as a roster spot here next year? And this is why when you watch this show, yes, we're always going to understand who this team is, and we're not going to overstate it. They are who they are to a certain extent. But anybody that thinks this is a homer broadcast, you've got to trust in Matt Painter. We say that time and again. And for some, I think there's always a little bit of hesitation because fans always know best. But look at how this team has come together here and finished this season getting to the Sweet 16. Everything they do here going forward is a cherry on top. And I understand we've got to continue to keep our expectations high. This team still has a chance to get to their second straight Final Four right now. But I think we need to keep things in perspective when you talk about the players they lost last year. You lose Mason Gillis and Ethan Morton, who were leaders on this team for 4 straight years. You lose Lance Jones, who was a glue guy in that locker room, an impact player that got you to your first Final Four since 1980. And you lose Zach Edey, the 2-time reigning National Player of the Year. And they show up this season with a lot of youth, a lot of inexperience, and high expectations for guys like Kaufman-Renn, who, what did he average when Zach Edey was here? 5 points a game? Braden Smith comes in here. Now you got to be the leader. Big Ten Player of the Year. First team All-American. First team All Big Ten for Kaufman-Renn. So let's start celebrating the wins here now, because this season is officially a success. And I'm not saying I'm giving up for anything the rest of the way, but what I am saying is we're going to enjoy this right here, right now. They have to feel really good in that locker room because a lot of pundits were ready to write this team off playing high point. So much so that Kaufman-Renn's doing an interview where they're telling him, hey, no one thought you were going to win this game because of all your past failures. That team was in the national championship 12 months ago. Give me a break. Show some respect to these guys. They haven't been perfect. This team hasn't been perfect, but they've gotten to this point now, and this program is in the golden era, continues to be the golden era, and in a down year, what was supposed to be a down year, they're back in the Sweet 16. Go ask Illinois fans how desperate they are for their team to get back to the Sweet 16. 2 straight for them if they're to get there tomorrow, which would be the first time that's happened since the early 2000s. So appreciate this golden era of Purdue basketball, and it ain't over yet. It just keeps going, keeps rolling over year after year. So let's have some fun, man. Can't wait to get to Indianapolis next week.
I mean, what am I supposed to follow that up with, Braggs? Like, what am I supposed to do here? I will say, just to kind of piggyback off that before maybe we get into a little bit more of the game itself. There's been a couple people be like, Purdue got a good draw, like Tamaz, we got a good draw, and then
of course
Chubb's 82 somewhere in there. I don't know if he's one of your guys, or not.
Chubbs is a good friend of mine and a complete troll and is waiting with bated breath for Purdue to lose. Well, it didn't happen this weekend, Chubbs. You're gonna have to wait a week.
And my only point to that, 1, appreciate the sport, but 2, like, you play who you play. Yes, Purdue got a good draw, but also High Point was probably the second most picked upset in the first round. And when I scroll Twitter, and maybe my Twitter is just what it is, when I scroll Twitter, McNeese was probably the most picked upset for this round. Like, yes, they don't have to play Houston or Gonzaga this round, or Kentucky, or just teams like that, but they still took care of business of who was in front of them. You take every advantage that you can get. They got, I think, a little lucky with their seeding in the tournaments. You take advantage of who you play in front of you and you go win, right? And even with who they played, lots of people were still picking against them. Lots of people were still doubting them. And now they're in the Sweet 16, right? And I agree. I think at this point the season, based on preseason expectations, I think I would call a success. Now, you could argue maybe based on where expectations were January, still, maybe they do need to win one more, but they're back in the Sweet 16. There are 364 teams in D1 college basketball. only 16 of them are going to be playing basketball next Thursday or Friday, and Purdue's
And
one
I've
of them.
been I've been saying this for 2 weeks, and I know Chubbs is excited here in our chat. And I get it. Hey, McNeese State beat Clemson. Clemson didn't play their best game, but if we're gonna play the transitive property, Clemson beat Duke. Clemson is one of the Duke went 31-3, and one of the 3 losses they had were to Clemson. So that's the team that McNeese State took down. Now, hey, any given day, anyone can win a game.
Yep.
Purdue, of all programs, knows this and has been through this. And High Point certainly tested them. They got them down to 3 with 7 minutes to go, and I really appreciated and I thought it was just very encouraging to see the resolve that the team showed in that moment. There was no resolve moment here today. Purdue just flexed their muscles on a team that they should flex on, but you don't take tournament wins for granted. Anything can happen. And so it's just one of those things where Purdue is no longer, in these last couple games, playing with their food in certain moments. They're asserting themselves as one of the top programs that they've been here for the better part of the last decade. And instead of playing scared, like we've seen against teams that they shouldn't be afraid of, because they're the ones that are playing with nothing to lose, and Purdue has everything to lose and all the embarrassment on the line. Instead, they came out and do what they do best. And for Purdue's team this year, they haven't been great about their composure this season. They haven't been. And so to have a couple games after losing by 30 or whatever it was to Michigan in the Big Ten tournament, that humbles you. That takes a hit to your ego and what you think you're capable of. Fletcher Lawyer's got an elbow sprain. How's he going to come back from that? So I just really appreciate the way they've come into this tournament and shown who they are from an experience standpoint and an ability standpoint. Let's take a time out and have a couple super chats in here to bring in from Derek Mulligan, $9.99 super chat. So Kraig can get a hot dog during the St. John's game. We're coming home, baby. I'll be there. And hey, I fully intend, once we figure out what the schedule is, I don't know if they're going to play Thursday, Saturday, or Friday, Sunday. I'm assuming it's Thursday, Saturday, but we ultimately just don't know.
I believe Indy is a Friday, Sunday. I'm going to fact check you though, real quick. And you keep going.
And that's great. I didn't know if they could even announce that yet. But regardless, I fully intend to do meetups in Indianapolis like we did last year, where we can all kind of, anybody that's going to be down there, let's do a meetup. I'm going to just go to the game as a fan. I'm not even going to attempt to get a credential. Joe and Kraig will be there, credential, doing their thing. I'm just going to be in the stands with the rest of you guys. And so I'm excited to get down there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Another super chat that came in, late night tips, live stream, $4.99 super chat. Never take a Sweet 16 for granted. Season stamped as an official success. 20,000 strong versus Houston on Friday night. So I think late night tips is saying what you're saying, that it's going to be on
Sunday.
Friday. And you have to imagine that game's going to be a primetime slate. They're all primetime once you get to the second weekend. It's not like any games are going to be played earlier in the day. So that's going to be great. That's great. That's going to be great. And I fully intend to be there as early as I possibly can be. It's just, it's exciting, man. You don't take them for granted, and that's well said. And I ultimately, I don't know how other people do it, but I loved the fact that the Big Ten was 8-0 in the first round. They're 9-0 now in this conference. I'm rooting for every single one of these Big Ten teams to get to the second round, even though Joe is never going to get to sleep again because of all the different breakdowns and matchups that he does for Feed the Post. But I'm rooting for the rest of the Big Ten to get to the Sweet 16 because I'm tired of this narrative around the Big Ten that they can't play in this tournament. And I do think that the transfer portal and NIL and everything else and the way everything is kind of even the scales across the national landscape for college basketball. Well, the Big Ten has remained, and if anything, has gotten stronger with teams from the West Coast joining this conference. And so, to me, I think the Big Ten is going to start getting some due respect here this weekend with the amount of teams that are going to make the Sweet 16. And let's hope that we get a good showing in the Final Four and potentially a team that can win a national championship. Why not the Boilers? I'll say this much. I'm excited for, as my light almost fell. I am excited to see how Purdue can finish this season. You're playing with house money. You have an opportunity to take down a 1 seed, maybe potentially here next week in your hometown. You have a chance to go to back-to-back Final Fours. You are playing with house money. And I'm sure the players don't want to hear that because they have higher expectations for themselves. We're all like, okay, successful season, we're good. They are going to hold themselves to a standard. I can remember talking to Kaufman-Renn after the national championship loss in the locker room and trying, because like for me, they had a lot to be proud of. Yes, you lost to UConn. You're so close to the top of the mountain to get that national championship, and you didn't get it, and they were certainly disappointed, but it's over at that point. And I just felt like they had so much more to be proud of than to be disappointed in. So I asked some questions like, are they able to reflect on what they've done here? And, you know, Zach being his last game, I think he was able to kind of muster that up a little more, as upset as he was able to kind of look at the bigger picture because he knew it was his last game. When I teed that up to Kaufman-Renn in that national championship locker room last year, he wasn't having it. He's like, no, man, I'm looking to get back here and finish this job. And that was a really impressive answer at that moment, because it's easy in the moment to be like, you know, give yourself a pat on the back, but it shows you the level of expectation that they, in the standard that they set for themselves. And so, you know, Braden Smith, Kaufman-Renn, Fletcher Loyer here in their junior year, everything, all the credit was given to Zach Edey these last few years. And now watching this team get to the Sweet 16 without their guy that was just too tall, and now he's doing the same damn thing he's doing in the NBA that he was doing in college. Now these guys get to make a name for themselves on their own standing and see where they can push it, see how far they can push the limits, see if they can get to a Final Four on their own. And I'll tell you right now, however this year finishes, they are a national championship contender next season as well. So I'm excited for everything that's ahead for this Purdue program.
Yeah, I don't know if I have too much more big picture stuff, because I think we hit on it of like,
yeah, I'm hyped. I'm hyped. So you're the one that's you're going to have to reel me back in, because I know we want to talk about the individual performances. Fletcher obviously had some big moments. I will say, let's try to reset here and talk about our plays of the game, if you can find one, Joe, but I know where mine are. And it was two different moments where early in the game, which was really where the only time where the game felt there was even, it was, you know, at balance, right? Were misses where they come back the other way, either a miss or a turnover where they come back. CJ Cox picks it off, takes it back the other way. They get the bucket. That to me was a back-breaking moment. Then there was another one that goes the other way where McNeese stays trying to find momentum, and Fletcher Loyer doesn't give up on the play, picks the back pocket, takes it back, and I believe got fouled. And I felt like those two moments early in the game really just defined the way Purdue was able to just, you know, clamp down and say, you're not getting any breathing room. Any little success you get, we're going to take it right back from you. Those two plays for me were the play of the games.
Yeah, the Loyer one was definitely the first play that popped in my head, where he just gets that back tap steal. CJ Cox was massive with both of his. I think Jakari's individual three, like, to me, was probably the point where I was like, okay, it's done. I think that pushed it. Like, McNeese was kind of pushing to 16, Purdue gets it to 18, and then I think they get a turnover. Jakari comes down and drills a three, and then it's a 21-point lead, and at that point, it's like, all right, yeah, this one's at least over in the head. I think I'm going to actually go with this. The more I think about it, I think the very first play of the game is my play of the game, where, right, you come into this game, McNeese is getting this hype, both on and off the court, right? For obviously the manager, which shout out him, but it was time for the run to end. Glad he got his bag. But McNeese comes in, right? All this hype, lots of people are picking them. You know, oh, the physical defense, how Purdue isn't going to be able to run their offense. Purdue isn't going to be able to get their looks. First play, 8 seconds into the game, I think. TKR sets a pin down. Purdue knows that they're going to switch that, and TKR immediately turns, seals, nobody at the rim to defend, wide open layup. And I think that play to me, that one, and I think maybe the next offensive play, I'm going to look it up now. Yeah, the very next offensive play being a Loyer three off of kind of like a kick out. Those two plays is just like, all right, yeah, like Purdue is here, Purdue is ready, Purdue is not going to be at least just completely punked, right? Maybe I wasn't going to say the game's over 5 seconds in, but I walked away from those two plays being like, yeah, Purdue is here, Purdue is ready. So I'm actually going to go with those as my plays of the game.
I like it. I did think it was funny to start the game. They get the TKR bucket, easy, mouse in the house moment. And then they come back down and McNeese hits a corner three. And the guy says, "Oh, that was fortuitous. He's only hit 4 threes on the season." And it was just like the High Point game. Same corner, same shot, knocks down the three. High Point, they're like, he was 30% on the year from 3-point land. And I'm like, what is it with Purdue? You're always kind of like waiting for that. And of course, the guy that's only hit 4 threes all year, hits one, in the corner to start the game. But that was pretty much, I think that was probably their only lead of the game, if I had to guess. And Purdue just put that away real quick.
Yeah, exactly. It's how it goes. Just players seem to hit shots against Purdue. I'm sure it happens to more teams than just Purdue. Like it has to, but man, it's crazy how much it feels like it happens to Purdue specifically. But Purdue, right? They if that was McNeese's first punch, you want to say, like, Purdue responded quickly. So just impressive from the start, because I think this is a team you didn't want to play from behind, or just if this team got hope, got life. The crowd's going to pull for them. I'm sure at this point, a very packed crowd with St. John's just tipping off. They would have all been pulling for McNeese, and you just don't want to be in that spot. And they really just never let McNeese be in that spot. They never let McNeese be comfortable.
Yep. No, they didn't. You're 100% right. Kraig Bowers will be joining us here in just a little bit. We'll definitely stretch this post-game show out, celebrate the win, celebrate the fact that Purdue's heading to another Sweet 16 here. But you're right. When you talk about not letting them get comfortable, I immediately go to Miles Colvin, who I have continued to be impressed with. All of us, I feel like, have been impressed with over the last month, 2 months now. It's the time period here is growing where he's really taken off. And the way he fights through screens and his length and athleticism, the way he stays disciplined and stays in front of his guy and doesn't try to do too much. And then when a player rises up on him to get a shot, he's always got the hand in the face. He's always ready for it. I saw somebody in the chat bring him up here just a minute ago, and I completely agree. Miles Colvin, man, your thoughts, Joe, because the way he's playing, when they switch that lineup where they take out, it's not Trey Kaufman-Renn and Caleb first, and they're going big to start the game, and they get to that smaller lineup, Miles Colvin isn't really small by any means, and he makes it really feel like, he suffocates whoever he's guarding.
Yeah, this is the Colvin, and in the Heidi too, but sticking with Colvin, like, this is the Colvin that I think me and lots of other people were kind of hoping to see coming into this season. A legit 3-and-D guy, can attack the glass, can defend. Like, you can make the argument he was the best perimeter defender Purdue had today, and at times has had this season. Obviously, CJ and Jakari have also been very good in their respective rights, but this is Purdue needs those guys they don't need those guys to always drop 20 points or, grab 55 rebounds or whatever. But they need them to play good defense. And the other guys, CJ, Colvin, Jakari, even Heidi can kind of get thrown into that perimeter group. Play good defense, knock down some open shots, and attack the glass. Those are the three things that they need the role players to do. And right, when you have Braden and TKR, and I know it wasn't an awesome Braden game, but when you have Braden and TKR and Fletch being able to do what they do, good things are going to happen. Good things are going to happen when you get those role players playing like that, because Braden's a top 3, top 5 player in the entire country. TKR is maybe the best low post scorer in the country, or one of the best bigs. Lawyer has been one of the best shooters. You just need those little contributions, cover up some of the gaps, and Colvin has been a major part in that, especially these last really month. It's just a lot of his emergence coincided with Purdue losing, and so I think it probably got overlooked just a bit.
Well, it never got overlooked here on this broadcast and this program. We do post-game shows after every game. For those of you that are new to this show, Joe and Kraig do preview shows before every game. We even try to fit in shows where we interview different players, or Matt Painter has been a guest on our show each year to start each year. So that's what we do here at Boilers in the Stands. So make yourself at home, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube if you haven't already. I know some fans like to watch on Facebook and Twitter as well. We appreciate all of you guys, but if you head over to YouTube, it's a very easy way to support and help grow what we're doing from a community standpoint, because on YouTube, if you hit that like button, if you comment to the show, if you those are subscribe to the channel, those are things that feed that algorithm to other Boilers fans that may not be aware of our work just yet. But Joe, I'll kind of let you take it from here because obviously I've just been a ball of fire to start this show, and we've talked about Miles Colvin, but who do you want to start with? I know a lot of people in the chat are big game fletching it, so I don't know where you want to go with this from a individual standpoint or however you want to take this. Yep, go ahead.
I'm gonna go to the board because Kraig should be on shortly, and we can kind of have these conversations more with Kraig.
Yep, the board, an Emmy award winning, what just fell?
I have golf balls, and two of them fell.
Yep, Joe got me some.
One has
yeah. There it is. Look at that. Joe got me those Boilers in the Stands golf balls. Shout out to Joe.
Shout out to my parents. They're actually the ones that bought them. Do we want to start on the offense or defense? Because I kind of have one for each.
Let's start on defense because I felt like defense is what won this game.
Okay, so I think McNeese a lot. They, will run kind of just stuff like this, where their X's and then Purdue's O's, and in general, this is kind of if say the ball's here, ball's up here. This is in general how a defense would play, I would say, just kind of specifically. But what Purdue did and what they have done and what at their height of their defense, what they did so well was they collapse. And so if the ball's here, and say this guy's trying to flash here, you might even be doing this. And now this guy's helping. And they mentioned it on the broadcast where you have 4 to 5 guys basically with a foot inside the paint. And so they just really wanted to collapse everything in. And if McNeese wanted to beat them with 3-point shots, then so be it. McNeese is a fine 3-point shooting team. They weren't bad by any means, but that's not their bread and butter. They want to get to the rim. They were top 5 in the country in terms of rim rates, which just means the percentage of shots you take at the rim. We know Purdue's 2-point percentage defense hasn't been good. And so what they do to counter it is, okay, sag in, sag in, sag in. Now, if there's a drive, this is going to be a dig. This is help here. If this kick happens, all right, then we'll rotate out. But that's how you saw, especially early in the game, where it felt like you have this drive, it gets kind of cut off here. And so now when he gets cut off, now Purdue can stay in front. And I've mentioned it this entire week. Staying in front better is going to just solve 80% of Purdue's defensive issues, maybe more. If they can just stay in front and force tougher shots, that's going to happen. So now when the ball's here, you're going to just probably pin in like this, or if there's a screen, if this guy comes up, sets a screen, there's just no room to operate. And that's where you saw them dribble. And I mean, how many, fade away 13 footers did they take from this spot or just kind of in this area? It's just because the defense was so collapsed. And I also do think they did, when those skips happen, for the most part, did a pretty good job of understanding, okay, there are certain guys we have to close out to. And there are certain, I think, Richards has been a really, really good 3-point shooter. Have to close out hard to him. But otherwise, we know that, all right, we're just going to not close out, but live with those shots more and just try to force in here. And when Purdue is at their best defensively, it is going to be because they aren't allowing teams to take shots at the rim. We all know, and don't have to harp on it. Purdue doesn't really have a rim protector, Purdue, that's not been a strong suit for them. But when the defense is locked in and they're able to stay in front, then they can make up for it with just having bodies and, flipping to the offensive side. So I just needed to switch markers because the marker was dying on me. I'm going to check this. Okay, we're good. Switching to the offensive side, McNeese, I think at times did a similar thing. And McNeese had a tough dilemma where, you have, now Purdue's on offense. And so, you're going to have this high ball screen that they love to run, something like this. Now, McNeese is just generally going to switch this, where if he comes off switch, and that's where you saw some of those pocket passes to the roll right here. And then say if TKR gets it in here, now this guy has a dilemma. Am I selling out on TKR and going to leave this kick out, or am I staying? And this is where I think you saw Purdue at times just take advantage of McNeese's switching because, all right, when this screen happens, this switch is going to jump out here. So now we're like this, where now it's TKR's guy here, and whoever was guarding Braden is here. And again, they it felt like they tried both, and you kind of have to, right? When you get down, whatever they were down 30 or 25 or whatever it was. Sometimes I think they really sealed in where, okay, if the ball goes here, we're going to really, really collapse. And that's when you saw all those kickouts happen. But then there's other times where I thought TKR did an awesome job of just like when that switch happens, like there was a few times he just sealed them like down in this area. And if you get the ball to TKR this close to the rim, McNeese isn't an overly big team. Buckets like that are just going to happen. So, right, there's obviously a little bit more complexity in terms of some of the sets that they ran and things like that. But I do think that's a good general summary of the bind offensively that Purdue put McNeese in, because when these shots are falling from three, you can't just focus on Braden and TKR, and you have to make a decision of, all right, are we staying one-on-one and just living with the results there? Or are we just going to keep making them bomb from three? McNeese, I think, opted for that one a little bit more, but even then, TKR still ends up with 22 points on 7 and 12 shooting and 15 rebounds.
Yep. And they said it on the broadcast, and I think this is the one thing, even though it's a short turnaround for how you can scout a team and take advantage of what they're doing. And one of the things Purdue did, especially to start the game, was Painters told them shot fakes and pass fakes, because McNeese State was playing over aggressive, or is an aggressive defense. So use those shot fakes and those pump fakes to get them going one way, and then seeing how they scatter, and then, taking that to your advantage, and now finding the open guy that's going to knock down the corner three or whatever you have it. And then I think the other adjustment that maybe isn't board necessary, as we have our special guest joining us here just in a moment, was the fact that they started the second half letting CJ Cox take the ball up the court a few times, because Braden Smith was certainly getting hounded by Tajon Brown. Zero, I thought when he came in, I thought he gave really good minutes to McNeese State and was giving Braden Smith all he could handle for a full court. So why not let CJ Cox, let somebody else bring it up the court, so Braden doesn't have to exert all his energy getting it across the half court line. And now you got to ask him to try to facilitate and be the point guard. So those are, I think, two things that they did really well here today. Now, that being said, joining the program here on Boilers in the Stands is, of course, our guy, Kraig Bowers, fresh off of a big round of 32 win for Purdue over McNeese State in Providence, St. John's in Arkansas, about 5 minutes into their game. So I know Kraig will want to get back to see a big time matchup between Rick Pitino and John Calipari. Well, I mean, enjoy I told Joe this will be an extended post game show. We're going to have fun. We're going to celebrate this, because this is a big moment for Purdue and this team and these players, these coaches, everything. But I also want you to enjoy now your trip out there. You get a day and a half of some really great basketball and some of the best coaches to ever do it out there. But Kraig, the floor is yours. You were there in the stands on Media Row. Tell us everything that you felt in the 1,000 feet view perspective that you always are so great at giving us.
Yeah, well, I got to hang out with my buddy Spike Lee, who was sitting just down the row from me where I was, and really good environment today. The crowd, the Purdue crowd, was definitely bigger today. The McNeese crowd wasn't as big as High Point, so it definitely felt more, like a normal neutral site game. And I thought Purdue fans really brought it. That were there today. I think the biggest thing for me, and Joe and I talked about this in the preview show, Purdue finishes with 19 turnovers, which is not a great number, right? That's not a number that Painter's ever going to be happy about. But they never really lost their composure when those things happen. We've seen at times, if Purdue's turning the ball over, then they break down defensively. Then they quit running the stuff on offense they're supposed to run. Even with that amount of turnovers, they just didn't let it ever snowball on them and lead to mistakes in other places. And the other thing to me was just the physicality. Like, Trey was a physical beast out there today. He sets a career high in rebounds with 15 today. His previous career high was 13 coming into this game. Offensively, it was a good game for him. Not like his best game ever from a scoring standpoint or anything like that, but he was really good. Another thing we talked about on the preview show and highlighted was, like, Trey's got to make the right decisions and not force as much as McNeese will send help. He had 3 assists real early on in this game. And I thought his decision-making for the most part today, about not forcing, about trusting teammates and getting it out there, was vital, and just the way that he imposed his will on the glass was, I think, one of the biggest stories of the game. And then for me, the other big story in this game was everybody else around the big three. I put that out in the final breakdown kind of stat on Twitter that we were looking at, but 27 points and 13 rebounds between Cox, Colvin, Heide, and Harris. And one of the biggest moments for me, McNeese had forced 3 turnovers. They were starting to get a little bit of momentum and chip into the lead just a little bit. Painter goes to that lineup with Harris, Colvin, Cox, Smith, and TKR out there, and completely changed the complexion, because now you've got 2 elite ball handlers, or really good ball handlers out there around Braden that can both bring it up the court. Jakari had a couple of real late game turnovers, but for the most part, I thought that just really settled Purdue down and made sure that there wasn't going to be some sort of late type of run. But what those 4 guys did, both scoring and on the glass, for me is the second big story of this game beyond what TKR did.
Yeah, I feel you there, especially when you talk about the composure. You can make an argument after those 2 technical fouls. There was like a 5-minute stretch where the turnovers were, I mean, the game was like out of hand. So I think that's part of the context of, the mentally let going of the rope there. But there was turnovers that were compounded with, them getting scores on the other end. And then it was an 11-0 run. You go from a 26-point lead to a 15-point lead, which was really the only time that McNeese showed any type of life. But at that point, they've dug themselves such a big hole. But to your point about not letting the turnovers get to you, specifically in the first half when the game was still at hand, and I talked about it earlier as one of my plays of the game, they turn the ball over. Fletcher Lawyer follows the guy up the court and picks it off his backside, right?
Yep.
They missed a shot at one point, or maybe it was a turnover, but I think it was a missed shot, and CJ Cox picks the ball off and takes it other way for a score. And so those, I think, were 2 embodiment moments of this team not letting those things, negative plays affect you. Missed shot, turnover. Now you go make a play on the other end and bring it back and take care of your business. The other thing, too, when you talk about this team sharing the basketball, they had more assists than McNeese State had field goals in the first half. They had 9 assists to their 8 made field goals. At one point, McNeese State, I think, had like 16 straight minutes without an assist. So they were just doing such a great job, and Joe broke some of it down on the board of just isolating these guys, and they're not a great shooting team. I mean, one of the guys they were saying was one of their better 3-point shooters. He like shot puts it. I was like, I'm sure he is, but it was hard for me to see how he's such a good
42% on the year.
That's crazy to me. The way he shoot, it's so like, it's not just shot putty, but it just comes out.
It's closer to like Sean Marion type.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So
not
overall,
quite.
There was a really funny moment around those technicals that just where I was sitting on media row, you could see it just plain as day. Will Wade is going at the ref that's standing right next to Fletcher, getting ready to check the ball out. And like Fletch leans over like towards the ref to make sure he's in Will Wade's vision. And he starts doing like dipped and shoulder motion, like to him, like he threw his shoulder into Braden or Fletch or whoever picked up the charge. And then he just smirked at him and started giggling. And then TKR like knocks the guy to the ground on the next play. And like, it's almost like Fletcher got him even more riled up with the little like gesture and smirk at him. And then he just lost his crap, like right after they didn't call a foul on TKR on the other end, and boom, technical right after that. So
yep.
Funny exchange there. The other one more story of being down there and being able to actually hear the coaches. Cam like head fakes and the guy like somersaults over top of him.
Mm-hmm.
And Painter wanted a shooting foul.
Sure.
And the ref's like, he never went up. Painter just he just stayed. He's like, you want him to kill him? He was gonna kill him if he went up.
Right.
Like obviously he was in the shooting motion. Like he did it to be nice, not to kill the guy. You've got to give him his shots. Like, what do you want him to do? Kill him? You want him to kill him?
Right. And that's interesting because if you watch it on the TV broadcast, he does kind of start to go up. And you're right. Like if he had given his full energy up, he already kind of flipped him up there. And so that made for like a really dangerous moment for the McNeese State player that left his feet. And, so you're right. There was an element of Cam Heide somewhat protecting him because he could have been much more demonstrative in the way he went up with the basketball to make sure he gets his 2 free throws. But there's a player safety there moment that, at least was in some consideration. So interesting underlining. I mean, I know you said you saw Spike Lee, while you were there. He was also sitting next to the manager, the team manager that's they said on the broadcast has gotten 130 new NIL offers, since all this NCAA tournament fame. And we're not going to kick dirt in their face while they're down. They lost, but media was certainly trying to drum up somewhat of a fun national story. And of course it's against Purdue. I think they were doing the same thing with High Point, a first-time team in the tournament. And, Purdue's faced teams like this with, St. Peter's getting to the Sweet 16 and Fairleigh Dickinson and North Texas and every other team in between. And I'll just say it again, Kraig, I said it to start the show, but it's just, I appreciate just how much this team doesn't blink now in these kind of moments. They are expected to beat High Point and McNeese State. And I think High Point definitely made them feel it a little more. But at the same time, in both games, the composure, to your point about some of the turnovers, even though not letting it affect them, I just appreciate so much how now this experience is now giving these guys a composure level that we didn't see before the national championship season. And they've had their trouble with composure throughout the end of this year, losing 6 and 9 at certain points. So to kind of pick themselves back up and get to the Sweet 16, think about the experience now that this freshman class is getting. I saw Brandon Brantley tell Jakari Harris, hey, that's your first one after High Point, right? Well, now this is 2 wins for the freshman class. Now they get to see what it's like to get to a second weekend and the preparation it takes. Those are huge things that, you just can't quantify that's going to help these guys for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. So I don't know if people watch the locker room interviews that I posted yesterday, I guess. I asked Jakari and CJ both, if there was just a little bit of jitters of being in this first NCAA tournament, having that one and done. If you lose, you go home and the season's over type of feeling. And Jakari kind of walked around it, and CJ was just like, yeah, like I definitely think we were all feeling it. And you could see it in our shots. And then we settled in and had a chance to talk to him again after the game in the locker rooms and just said, yesterday you talked about that. How did it feel going out there today? And he was like, just felt like another game today. Like felt like another game. We'd gotten through that. We got that first win. It was off of our back. And I think you could see that. And CJ's been good defensively and rebounding, but the last 3 or 4 games, like his offense kind of disappeared a little bit. So it was really nice to see CJ back on the offensive end. And that might be I realized Harris didn't shoot the ball great, but was that the best those 4 have all played together this year, Joe, you think?
All 4 collectively? Yeah.
All 4 collectively. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I thought you had more on that. But yeah, no, they were awesome. The couple of threes that he made were big time. I thought Jakari was awesome on the boards. And like Heidi, I know he gets in and out of foul trouble, but even his minutes felt impactful. We've already talked about Colvin 8 and 6. Like it was very good to see that. What?
He only takes 2, but he doesn't miss one. Yeah.
Yeah, true. For Heidi, is that who you're talking about?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Exactly. No, but Purdue. I mean, if Purdue gets all 4 of those to play like that, and then you get a good Braden and TKR and Fletch game, like that is a team that can compete with anybody. Obviously, I don't know if it's realistic to get that performance from all 4 every game, but you get even that production from 2 to 3, like that. That's going to be the recipe to try and advance to the Elite Eights. Because I know Gonzaga is an 8 seed. Gonzaga is the most underseeded team maybe in like the history of the tournaments. Like that's not an 8 seed. So Purdue either way going to have a tough matchup, but I'm excited that we get a prep for a Sweet 16 matchup.
Well, and it's interesting too, because when you talk about to start the year, it was like the big 3 and nobody else contributing. And then you started to get a little bit of contribution. Caleb first comes into the starting lineup. Now it adds to that. And then you're like, well, where's the bench contribution? There were so many games where it's just non-existent. And now you're getting bench contribution in bunches from many guys. Will Berg, I know he didn't play that much in the second half, but even in his first half minutes, I can't believe in these two games that Will Berg is somebody that's having an impact. And so that's just so we haven't even seen Raleigh Burgess, and he was somebody that, had good minutes during the season at times as a rookie, as a freshman, I should say. So maybe he'll make a resurgence next weekend, but Will Berg with his size, we've been looking for a rim protector, hey, that's just another wrinkle now that teams have to account for. And so it's fun, man. It's cool to see this kind of all come together. This whole season has been a journey. Now you get to this point and everything's really just coming together, and Matt Painter is just the master at this. And I'll just continue to say it year in and year out. He's one of the best coaches in the country, if not the best coach in the country. And we are lucky. We are lucky to be fans of this program with that head coach. And we, the three of us, are lucky to be able to cover this team with that guy at the helm.
For sure. I know you're not a huge plus minus guy, Joe, but did you see CJ's plus minus today?
Oh yeah, CJ was plus 18 in the 20 minutes that he played.
18 points in 20 minutes today. That just kind of blows my mind a little bit. Go ahead.
I didn't tweet it out, but like in my head, because CJ's been your guy. I would say you're the, not obviously you root for everybody, but he's the single guy you root for the most, I would say. And when CJ drilled that first three in my head, I was like, man, Craig's probably smiling right now.
I root for all of them, but contributors beyond the top three, like I see like a very, very high ceiling for CJ someday, I guess is where I'm at. And,
did not mean you don't root for everybody else.
Yeah, it was good to see that come back. So I am going to go enjoy Rhode Island, Greg, if that's okay.
Unless there's
you told me that. You told me to do it. So
there's 10 minutes to go in the first half of St. John, Arkansas. So I don't know if you're heading back to the stadium to see Patino versus Calipari, or if you're trying to hit Rhode Island up and see the sights and sounds. You can do whatever you want, my friend. Great job with your coverage. I don't know if there's any other, individual highlights or anything. We didn't really get too much into individual stuff outside of, we talked a little bit about Miles. So this has been a lot of big picture talk and just throwing flowers at this amazing program and the golden era of Purdue basketball. So final thoughts, Kraig, and then you can go do your thing and have your fun.
Hey man, look, when the season started and we were all saying like expectations for this Purdue team, for most fans, I think, had you said Purdue's going to get back to the Sweet 16 this next year, because everybody's looking at next year, right? And development of these freshmen. Don't know what else the team will look like. You get a new freshman in. Benner is going to start to, be on the roster as an active player as well. And everybody's looking at that Indy Final Four as maybe the next big time moment. And most people would have said, Purdue makes it back to a Sweet 16 this year, we'll call that a success, right? They've done it. There was some ups and downs. There were some bumps along the road. There was some adversity. Obviously, Daniel Jacobson getting injured completely changes what maybe this team's ceiling was. And yet they still managed to get to a Sweet 16. All the national media picked High Point over Purdue. All the national media were picking McNeese over Purdue after Purdue got past High Point. And Purdue just went out and handled business both times. And when we get to the Sweet 16 in Indy, anything can happen. It would be awesome if Gonzaga can knock off Houston and maybe make that a little bit more manageable game. But if Purdue fans show out, okay, and there wasn't a huge contingency out here, but if Purdue fans show out in Indianapolis, I understand why not everybody traveled out here. Not going to speak too much about the city of Providence itself, but everybody spent a lot of money traveling last year. But you guys have to show out in Indy, man. And if we can pack that place and make that a friggin' 75, 80% home crowd, even against Houston, if Purdue gets out to a good start, man, I'm not counting anything out of the question.
No, man. Hey, let's, everybody always talks about the Carson Edwards, Ryan Klein year. They're down in Louisville playing some tough teams in the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight. And then the threes just start raining down. And hey, everybody seemed to finding their 3-point stroke here in this last game. They knocked down 11 threes from a lot of different guys. They're sharing the basketball. You go in, now you're the underdog as a team that was a national champion runner-up last year against Houston, and you're playing in your hometown with your home fans. So, Kraig, I said it earlier, I intend to be there next weekend for both games. It's going to be on a Friday and Sunday, potentially, if they are able to win. We're going to do our meetup like we did last year, and share some fun with the fans. But I'm going to go back to my roots and be the fan in the stands, however I can get into that building. And I'll have a few different ways. I'll be begging people to help me out. And if not, I'll just walk my ass in there one way or the other. But I'm excited for it. Go ahead, Kraig.
I had to pull this up from Gary before I got off of here. I don't know if you guys remember Gary. He was in Phoenix last year. He came into the party with that flag.
Yep.
And he had to sign the flag, right? I ran into Gary at Magoo's in Lafayette a couple of weeks back. By the way, those of you in the Lafayette area, if you've not had Magoo's pizza yet, this is my little pitch that it's the best pizza in town. But anyway, Gary, thank you very much for the $20 so that I can go buy a cold one in Rhode Island and enjoy my rest of the day out here. It's been freezing out here. Today, the sun's actually out, so I'm going to get out and put some of my feet to pavement and see a little bit of the city.
All right, well, go enjoy that, and we'll get back to the coverage when you get back. You coming back Monday? Are you going to be staying there for the next couple of days? You going back tomorrow?
6 a.m. flight tomorrow morning. I will be home before the first game tips off.
There it is. That's
there you go.
That Kraig brings, and I know when you travel safe, enjoy the rest of Rhode Island, and when you get back next week, we'll certainly dig back into some preview shows and talk about, the road to the Final Four, as the Purdue Boilermakers have now gotten back to the Sweet 16 for the second year in a row. So have a good one, Kraig, and we'll catch up with you here soon.
All right.
That is Kraig Bowers, as always, killing it with the coverage. Make sure you hit the like button while you're hanging out. As I always say, I don't know what I'm doing there. We got a little blown up there for a second, but appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on the Boilers in the Stands post-game show. So, Kraig, let's dial it back again.
I'm Joe, but
yeah, you are Joe. You are Joe indeed, and you're such a great dude. And then I called you Kraig. So yeah, like I said, we haven't really gotten any kind of individual performances outside of Miles Colvin. Then you went to the board. Then we kind of went back to having fun with Kraig. So I don't know where you want to take this. Obviously, I know a lot of, as I said, the fans keep talking about Fletcher Lawyer or anybody else. I know we've touched on everybody, but I'm gonna let you kind of decide where to take this next.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've hit on the CJ Colvin, Heidi Harris a good bit, right? They all knock down a three. They all score. They all grab some rebounds, and just really good overall and good defense too. On top of that, TKR is probably where we have to go next. 22 points, 15 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, a steal. There's been no player
becomes the 8th player in program history to have 700 points in a season.
There's that. He's the first player in program history to have 22, 15, and 3 in a tournament game. Also, did that. So, I'm surprised Edie didn't do that last year.
That's what I was.
Regardless,
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, but regardless, TKR was awesome. 7 of 12 from the field, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. Right, I thought did a really good job in terms of. I thought it was a pretty good defensive game from him too. I know that's not necessarily his strong suit, but I thought it was a pretty good defensive game of keeping guys in front. If he needs to switch, he did that. And then 15 rebounds, a career high. Kraig talked about that a bit. Just was a monster on the glass. He had 15 rebounds, and McNeese as a team had 24. So McNeese out-rebounded TKR individually by only 9 rebounds. Just really, really impressive stuff. We talked a little bit about, right, the bind that he put them in terms of, do you throw multiple guys at him? And when they did, he right off the rip, and I think it was so important that it happened right away. Right off rip, he just made correct read after correct read, making all the right kickouts, making the correct passes, not being sped up, not turning the ball over. So when that happens, now this McNeese team that they're built on, all right, we want to pressure you and force turnovers and make you uncomfortable. Now they're kind of like, all right, well, what do we do now? Because our initial plan just kind of fell through. So even just besides the insane, box score numbers that TKR had, which is, as we said, the first time in Purdue history, I believe I saw on Twitter that has happened. Also just his impact in the margins of spacing, of defense and staying in fronts was just very, very impressive all around.
Yeah, I agree. Spacing, I think, is probably the best illustration of the things that Trey Kaufman was great at doing today. Just had a great ability because obviously he's going to be a focal point for every team on how to kind of slow the Purdue offense down. And some of those kickouts obviously were big. Tip outs, everybody was getting in on that action. You saw a few different points where they tried to double Trey Kaufman-Renn, and honestly, Caleb First was sealing underneath where he could have kicked it inside or out. You had some different options there. So I just think the spacing overall for the Purdue offense was great across the board. And, it's just one of those things too. When you talk about composure, I think composure is probably the word of the day or even the weekend in Providence, Rhode Island. And, we know Trey Kaufman-Renn and Braden Smith certainly can get frustrated at times. But Trey Kaufman-Renn specifically today had different points. He gets completely smacked right in the face, like on a rebound coming down, and wasn't called. And so I know those are things that at times can get under Trey's skin, and he just didn't. He just kept going at them, and he was great from the free throw line. I don't know what his numbers ended with. That was another story.
8 of 10.
Yeah, 8 of 10 from the free throw line. I know sometimes he can struggle there. So that's another thing where it's about composure and confidence. He walks up there and knocks down free throws. On the other end, you say 8 of 10 for TKR. McNeese State, how many free throws did they miss? 8?
They were 5 of 13, 38%.
Right. 5 of 13. So they miss 8 free throws while TKR makes 8 free throws. So, you're not really going to find anything in this game that's like, well, this was the difference in the game because you beat them by such a wide margin. But at the same time, there's a reason why they beat them by such a wide margin because they were doing so many things right on both sides of the court. At one point, they asked Bill Wade, the head coach of McNeese State, like, what concerns you more, your offense or your defense? He was like, both.
Yeah.
Because Purdue was just whipping their ass on both ends, honestly. And so that's a credit. McNeese State is a bully team. They want to bully you. And when they showed the lineups to start the game, and it was like you could see the size difference between the two. And as a Purdue fan, I'm like, oh boy, they're going to give Braden Smith problems. They're going to give TKR problems and make everybody uncomfortable. Let's see how this goes, because they had guards that are 6'6" and 6'7", right? Well, Purdue was the bully on the block today. Purdue, took it right to them, and that started with Trey Kaufman-Renn right off the jump.
Yeah, 100%. And right, Purdue just did such a good job of making it their style game and not getting sped up. And I know that they ended up with 19 turnovers, but both Purdue and McNeese had 16 points off turnovers. So like even the one area where McNeese was better, McNeese didn't even get to take advantage of, right?
Well,
so Purdue still.
Well, let's talk about that though, because then I think we can transition here to Braden Smith. Wasn't his best game, and
no.
If they were trying to win by 40, and Braden was doing everything he could to make sure it was a 20-point game. How many turnovers did he have on the day? 7, 8? 8, and like every time he's leaving his feet. He's always going to have a big impact and a positive impact on the game. But yeah, it's just one of those things where sometimes he just gets a little too loose with it in moments, and you kind of got to just take the good with the bad when it comes to Braden and let him kind of navigate through some things. But, you're going to potentially play Houston or Gonzaga next time around, and you got to keep those margins a little tighter. I know High Point, they did a great job of not turning the basketball over. And so I understand maybe the size of the lead maybe changes your attention to those details. But if you're playing Houston, I have to imagine they're going to be similar to McNeese State, where they're going to be switching. They're going to be trying to, use their athleticism. Lots of pressure. And so Braden, so that's great. You win a game, you turn the ball over 19 times. I know what Painter's going to be preaching for the next week until they play a team like Houston that's going to create that same kind of pressure, because you got to eliminate those turnovers and you got to hit your threes like you did today if you're going to have a chance to beat a team like Houston here next week, if that's who they play. Obviously, they got to get through Gonzaga, and if Gonzaga were to win, I mean, we've seen Gonzaga the last how many years now? 3 years?
Feels like 5. I think it's 3.
3. We didn't play him this year yet, right?
Twice last year, the year before that. So the past 3 times in the past 2 years.
Right. So we there's a big familiarity there with them. And Braden obviously has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder every time he plays them because he felt like they should have recruited him and they didn't, or not enough. And now here he's at Purdue giving them hell. So I think there's a lot of Purdue fans rooting for Gonzaga to be the opponent. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see how Purdue comes out and on that home court advantage and, playing with a little bit of a house money, nothing to lose kind of mentality. But I don't know what thoughts you have when it comes to Braden Smith. He knocks down a couple big threes early. He had that fadeaway where he got into the paint and it had that nice shooter's roll in. Him and TK are always playing the good pick and roll game. I mean, he had essentially, you want to talk about plays of the day, you can talk about his turnovers for sure, but how about the hustle he was showing on some of those loose balls, specifically the one on the sidelines where he dives? That's your Big Ten Player of the Year, laying out, keeping the ball in. Miles Colvin takes it the other way and gets fouled for 2 free throws. And so those are inspiring, moments for a guy that, maybe he's having struggles somewhere else, but look at how he's affecting the game. And those are the kind of things that really take the steam or the air out of the balloon for McNeese State.
Yeah, for sure. And right, it wasn't Braden's best game. 10 points. 10 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, only takes 7 shots. I do think he was aggressive still. And not every turnover, but I do think a lot of the turnovers for me is like, all right, you just kind of have to live with it, given McNeese at times was basically doubling him up at top of the key or, in that junkie zone where they're trapping, and he just has to get the ball out of his hands. I don't know. I think where I'm at is one, like I can be in both camps of like one, yes, just has to be better especially if they play Houston. Braden knows that, Painter knows that, everybody knows that. I'm not ultra concerned, but two, like some of the stuff I think I don't want to say you live with because right, 8 turnovers is a lot, but he is asked to have to create so much. And when he can get the ball out of his hands, like I don't know how many hockey assists he would have had today. Probably 3 to 5 would be just my initial guess. And for anybody that doesn't know, a hockey assist is where like the pass to the pass. So like an example would be Braden hits TKR on the roll and then TKR kicks out for 3. Now TKR gets the assist. Braden Smith would get a hockey assist that's obviously not actually tracked.
And he's the one essentially creating that domino effect.
Exactly. So there's some stuff there, but yeah, like he has to be better taking care of the ball. It is as simple as that.
And that goes without saying.
In the belief like Braden is going to, and I loved seeing the continued aggressiveness even as kind of some of the turnovers started to rack up.
Well, let me challenge you a little bit on that aggressiveness because, okay, I can live with some of the turnovers. At some point, he's got to recognize that it's happening too much and slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. That goes without saying. That's an easy observation. But, Jahan Brown, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, number 0 for McNeese State, comes in because of foul trouble, and he kind of ignited them with his full court pressure on Braden Smith. He certainly was mugging him to a point where you could make an argument he was fouling him at certain points. The broadcast, he was showing it, how he's like slapping up behind him, and he eventually got one call from it. But I also would say from a full court, mentality and the way Braden Smith kind of was approaching how Jahan Brown was guarding him, there were times where I felt like he was being a little too lackadaisical to take it up court. Once he got the inbounds pass, get it and go, dude. Like you're allowing that pressure now to become even more, hyper focused. And if you just turn on the burners and get up the court, then I just felt like there might've been some more success there. And I felt like there were times he was being a little too deliberate with once he got it, how he wanted to get squared up and get across the half court line where I want a little more tempo than that. I don't know how you feel in that observation.
I think at times he can, you got to pick your spots, I think, to do it. Because I do agree. There are times that, right, if he just kind of grabs and turns the corner, probably can just break the press and be fine. There's other times I know he wants them to clear out because then it's just one-on-one. I think it's understanding, especially later in the game, like, okay, no, even when Purdue clears out and lets Braden go, like McNeese is going to come back and jump trap. Like that's what they're going to do. They have to try to do something. I think those are the scenarios, especially where you need to see Braden start turning the corner more. He did the one time, I know for sure where he did that and got, across half court, but I'm with you there. I think there are spots where he can probably pick it a little bit more and just get it across quicker. And then, right. He just needs to get it across, get back to the middle of the court, and then he can still stand there for 10 seconds and let the offense set up.
Yep. And that being said, to start the game, where that was the only point the game was in the balance, the TKR hits the seal out, put it in, easy bucket to start the game. McNeese State has a player that's only made 4 threes all year, hit a 3. They come right back down, and Braden Smith knocks down a 3 to answer. And so that was kind of the story of the game, right? There was just every moment that McNeese State had any moment of positivity, there was an answer and a response on the other end, and Braden Smith was a part of that, even with some of those mistakes. And as I said, from an intensity standpoint, he was as intense as he ever has been, and playing with heart, intensity, and hustle.
And a good defensive game from him too, and that correlates with the energy, I think, too.
Yep.
Right, McNeese went at him in the second half, and they got a couple buckets, but they went at him in the second half, and I thought Braden held up for like as good as he can. Right, if he switched onto a 6'7" dude, there's only so much he can do from a one-on-one standpoint. And I know Blake Widmer asked this earlier. Said, question for Joe. In the second half, they ISO'd against Braden a lot. We didn't do much adjustment other than a harder dig from weak defender. What can we do to force a pass and avoid that? And I think it would be changing your whole scheme defensively, where Braden just kind of hedges and then tries to get back. The issue with that is, right, if you aren't on point, then McNeese is just getting downhill quick to the paint. So, and that's what Painter wants to do, is take away those easy drives like that, because, hey, we all know Purdue doesn't really have a great rim protector. So I do think it's just a little bit of, you kind of got to pick your poison. And I think what Painter and Purdue is going to want to do is they're going to switch to keep in front, and then they want to show war help. If it became more of an issue, that's where you could see, you've seen it at times, especially with Lawyer in games where, like I said, he does that little like high hedge and just try to push the ball handler back, and then they recover and stay in front. But it's a lot easier just to switch and show a bunch of help, is I guess my answer to that.
Yeah, for sure. Moving things along here on the Boilers in the Stands post-game show, Sweet 16 bound for your Purdue Boilermakers as they take down McNeese State and beat them 76-62. Certainly could have been an even worse deficit than that, as Purdue just takes it to the team from Louisiana and their boombox guy. Purdue had on their socials put out a tweet kind of giving a little wink and a nod to that, say booming our way to Indy. So they brought the boom box, but Purdue brought the boom here in this afternoon game, as Arkansas and St. John are kind of in a battle here, 28-27, 4 minutes to go here in the first half. So we're approaching halftime, and I know Joe is, and all of us, are certainly excited to watch a full slate of games today.
And tomorrow.
And tomorrow,
no stress.
Man.
Purdue's already in the Sweet 16.
It's a beautiful to be the first right out the gate for the round of 32 win and be able to enjoy the rest of this without thinking about anything until next Friday is a beautiful thing and a gift here to start your weekend. So congratulations to everyone for that, and thank you, Purdue, for bringing it home.
Yep, for sure. It's going to be very, very nice just to watch hoops for the next 20 or 30 hours or whatever. I'll have plenty of content. I'm going to self-plug a little. I'm going to have plenty of content out on Feed the Post, my Substack, everything for, if you want to, we'll do a preview show on here, kind of talking through everything, whether it be Houston or Gonzaga, but I'll have an actual film breakdown. That's on my Substack, Feed the Post. Also plan on getting out some sort of Sweet 16 preview on my YouTube, Feed the Post. So just a little bit of a self-plug. Also, though, I
always plug
I would
your
expect,
work,
I would expect Tuesday we'll have a preview out for whoever it is on here, Boilers in the Stands. Me and Kraig for sure. Maybe Braggs hops on. Maybe we grab Bobby again. I don't know. We'll see exactly what happens.
Absolutely. We'll have fun with it. No doubt about it. Well, I mean, we talked about TKR. We talked about Braden. We talked about, Miles early on. And obviously we really touched a lot of here on the bench, but haven't really had a chance to say anything about Fletcher Lawyer.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people were calling him Big Game Fletch here to start the show. And, he had a rough first game against High Point. coming back from that elbow sprain that he sustained against Michigan. He was only 1 of 4 against High Point. They kept running him off the 3-point line, so he really couldn't find a way to make a huge impact in that game. But today, that certainly was a different story.
Yeah, and he didn't shoot the ball awesome. He's 4 of 12 overall, 3 of 10 from 2. Does get 15 points. He has 5 assists to no turnovers. And this is a game where, right, in theory, again, not a great matchup for Lawyer. Going up against physicality, length, athleticism. He got a bunch of open looks. Hit a couple of the shots were big time, but I also thought all the other things that Lawyer does were just, I think, very pronounced in this game. 5 assists to no turnovers really stands out. He was right. He's not running pick and rolls or anything, but he was being able to move the ball. He was being able to make the extra pass. He was being able to, like I said, I mentioned it earlier in the show. He had one pass where it was like a 30-foot missile just straight into TKR in the post. That was just completely on point. And also defensively, I thought he was fine. There was no real point where I was just like, oh yeah, Lawyer's getting attacked defensively. Again, this is a game where in theory that can happen. And I thought Lawyer was good. So, right, you hope he maybe knocks 1 or 2 more threes down. That is what it is. But aside from that, he still knocked down a couple big time shots. And I thought all the little things that he is very capable of doing on a game-to-game basis came up to me in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a couple people here in the chat are bringing up, Salty B saying drawing the fouls was huge. Blake Widmer saying Fletch had some great post entries to TKR, something that can be underappreciated, in an offense. You need clean entry passes, and guys, some guys are better at it than others. I will also say, to start the second half, you had it. What was the score at halftime? Help me out here.
Purdue was up 18. I know that much for sure.
And then they hit a 3 to start the second half and got it down to 15. And then Fletcher Lawyer then matches it with a 3. And then on the next possession gets into the paint and hits another shot. Back-to-back buckets. So again, 2 moments there where, as I keep saying, every moment McNeese State tried to get life into the game, get the crowd into it, make Purdue a little nervous. One person after the other kept putting that flame out. And that's the mark of a team that has a lot of maturity. And they showed that here today, where they beat a team that they absolutely should beat handedly. And they did that. So shout out to Fletcher Lawyer, shout out to everybody, and I'm just proud of this program. It's a lot of fun to cover this team, and it's a pleasure to do this show with you as well, Joe. And we appreciate everybody in the chat for your support, hanging out with us all year long. Every year we do this, it just keeps getting more and more fun. And one of these days we're going to have our national championship post-game show where they are the team on top. I have zero doubt of that. It's coming. I told somebody at our studio that I said, now I didn't know who they were going to play between Clemson and McNeese State, but I just feel strongly about this. And Chubbs, I'm sure, is going to hold this receipt for the next year because he's been hanging out for the whole show, and I'm glad he is. But I do believe that this team can win the national championship next year. And I said to my friend, if they can get to the Sweet 16 this season, that's going to only cement that fact to me. Because now they're going to get, the young players are going to get that much needed experience of how to get to the second weekend, how to navigate through all this, the scouting on short turnaround from that first game to that second game in the first weekend. If they can get to an Elite 8 here in this next weekend, that's just huge experience for a very talented freshman class. Now they're going to be sophomores next year. You'll have Braden Smith, TKR, and Fletcher Lawyer as seniors. And you're obviously going to try to add, just like you did with Lance Jones, from the portal. You have Daniel Jacobson coming back. You're losing Caleb First, and he's been a glue guy for a long time, and one of the most successful, if not, it definitely is the most successful time to ever be a Boiler. He's got the most wins in Purdue history for an individual player. So I just feel very strongly that this team can win a national championship next year. And, this season ain't over yet either.
They're in the spot where you want to be right now. And it's, hey, anything can happen. If they go, even if it's Houston, they go and shoot 60% from 3, not saying that they have to do that to beat Houston, but random things can happen. That's the beauty of March Madness. all you got to do is keep giving yourself a chance to do that. And Purdue has done that. And I'm with you. Like next year, not to skip past the rest of this season because it is not done.
No,
but next year has the potential to be very special.
Right. And so, let's just enjoy it. That's what we're doing here on this post-game show. Let's get through some of the starred comments and different things that were highlighted, super chats as well. Stephen Nicholas, my good friend and co-worker at CHGO Sports, and he's a producer for CHGO Bears, and he's a big part of what makes us successful covering our Chicago sports, and a really good friend. He comes in and says, great win. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe, everyone. Appreciate you, Steven, as always. Steve Tater Swingle. McNeese was giving TKR the ED treatment in the second half. That shows a high level of respect for TKR's post game. 100% agree. Chubbs, 82, Illinois fan, who's got a big game coming tomorrow in Milwaukee against Kentucky. They certainly showed out from home crowd performance for Illinois here in the first round. That house is going to be rocking in Milwaukee at the Pfizer Forum here coming up tomorrow. Chubbs, 82, $5 super chat. I had the Stone Cold GIF ready. Greg, congratulations. You avoided it. He is stone cold when it comes to it. He'll send me the Stone Cold GIF as soon as Purdue loses every time. And he does not hide from it, even when they lose to the toughest losses I've ever experienced, where I'm literally ready to jump off a bridge, and he'll still send it to twist the knife a little bit. But you gotta wear it, because then, that's the thing that's unfair though. I don't do too over brag when Purdue's like on their runs. So I don't want to jinx it. So like Chubbs just gets to like go at me, but I don't get to take it back to him because I don't want to say anything, because I just want to like, everyone don't move. Don't change your clothes. Stay in your positions. Just like, because I just am so superstitious. So I don't really give him too much crap back, but he can have his fun for sure. Walter Evans saying, we still could get Gonzaga and Tennessee to go to the Final Four here in Indianapolis. That would be a crazy, crazy turn of events there, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's what they did last year. It's not it. I don't know. Like, especially if Gonzaga happens, not that Purdue probably wouldn't even be favorites against Gonzaga, to be truthful. But it's a very possible scenario, which would just be wild. And there must be some contract somewhere signed in the universe that, hey, Purdue and Tennessee just have to play in literally every single biggest game possible against each other. It's just like has to happen.
Well, and last year the role reversal would be that, Tennessee, if it got to that point, last year Purdue had everything to lose and Tennessee was kind of playing as the underdog. This year it'd be the reverse, where Tennessee, a team that's never been to the Final Four in program history, is now playing with everything to lose, where Purdue's the team playing with house money in their hometown. Whereas last year they played each other in Detroit, a little bit more.
Which basically was a home game too. Shout out the crowd last year.
1,000%. And Tennessee, Purdue, like, as somebody that might be a fan in the stands for that game, these fans do not like each other. So that would certainly be an interesting atmosphere if that's what it came down to. Salty B, $5 super chat. Nice team win. Excellent contributions by everyone. Blake Widmer bringing in chat here, saying Miles was fantastic on D in the first half. Very active hands. Completely agree, Blake. Chad P, everyone that goes to the game Friday, you have to get loud. Make it feel like a home game. Just win the next one. It'll be interesting to see the layout of the Colts, the Lucas Oil Stadium where the Colts play, as opposed to how it is at Gamebridge. When it was at Lucas Oil for the whole March Madness tournament a few years ago, so I don't know how they do that. Because I'm pretty sure the last time I went to Indianapolis for a tournament game, it wasn't Purdue. We just went down there for a couple good matchups. It was at Gamebridge. So I don't know.
You were at Gamebridge last year for Purdue in the tournament.
Correct. But this is why are they doing it at Lucas Oil? I don't understand this.
I guess because I looked it up. I looked it up early in the season because I was also like, why? But I guess that's just where they host the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. But they cut off half of Lucas Oil still.
That was going to be my question is how
it's not like the full Final Four atmosphere.
Right, because that's how it was for March Madness the year after COVID when fans were able to come back into the stands. They had a court on each side with a big drape cutting off half the field. So I'll say this much. If it is the exact same layout that was that season, the crowd is much further from the court. You're not on top of the court in that environment. It's not my favorite layout just from an energy standpoint and a loudness standpoint. That was the year that Purdue lost in the Big Ten tournament to I can't remember. Trying to
Iowa.
think. Iowa, no? Right?
No,
I don't know. You have to go back
Ohio
and look.
State.
But Ohio State. That's correct. That's correct. Ohio State. But in the tournament, they lost to North Texas in that stadium. And it was just, it was one of those things where it was just so cavernous, the way the layout of the stadium is. It's just not appealing from a basketball standpoint, in my opinion. I didn't like, when we're lucky enough to go to the Final Four in the national championship last year. I don't like that environment. It's cool just to be there and everything that comes, the pomp and circumstance that comes with it. But it's just so much different than every basketball environment you walk into all year. Now you're in this huge football stadium that's nothing like any other NBA or college basketball stadium. So not a big fan of the fact that they're going to Lucas Oil, but both teams have to deal with that. And only one team gets to say they have home court advantage. So Purdue just needs to show out and show up, and their fans do as well. So that's just kind of my thoughts there. David Dillman, question when Kraig joined. So I apologize about this, David, but are Smith's fingers okay? Had his fingers bandaged up and bled on the ball a little bit. So that certainly was a point in the game. Sorry we didn't get that question into Kraig. He did not. He was in the locker room, so he didn't get like any post-game press conference comments from Matt Painter. You kind of have to pick and choose your spot on that one. He chose to go to the locker room, so we didn't get any update with Braden. But, I mean, he finished the game, so I'm sure he's going to be fine going to next week. But we'll get you your updates on that here as the week progresses. Tammy Wallen, $9.99 super chat saying, thanks for all your coverage this year, guys. Looking forward to more. Hit that like button. Appreciate you, Tammy. As always, it's a loyal listener here to the show. Blake Widmer, also a loyal viewer to the show, says, thanks, Boilers in the Stands family. Great season. Extra sweet that we made the Sweet 16 in a quote-unquote bridge year. Final Four in Indy next year. Let's go. Absolutely. Have a couple of opportunities here in back-to-back years, even last year. So you'd have 3 straight years where you could have the first and second round in Indy last year, the second and third round in Indy this year, and the third and fourth round in Indy next year. So all rounds could be accounted for in a 3-year span, and Purdue could try to make some happy memories here in all rounds and have them all covered. Jack Carey, 31, $4.99 super chat. Thanks for all the coverage throughout the season. It's really appreciated. One more win, and this season is elevated to an elite season.
Like what they did there.
Yeah, for sure. You get to the Elite 8. Think about the fond memories everybody carries with that Carson Edwards, Ryan Klein year where it stopped, with a tough loss against Virginia in the Elite 8. But we always kind of look back on that year with fond memories. And, I think this year is setting up to be one of those years that fans are really going to appreciate, even though there was some tough losses at the end of the regular season. JB, $16.16 super chat. Boiler up from JB. Appreciate you for the Sweet 16 super chat. Jason Depew, $19.99 super chat. Thanks for the content as always, guys. A Friday meetup, boiler up. Got to keep up the $19.99 going. Appreciate you, Jason. And yes, there will definitely be a meetup on Friday. I'll be there. Joe and Kraig will definitely make an effort to stop by. They go into the stadium a little earlier, but I'm going to go in as a fan no matter what. And so that means I can spend a little more time with you guys instead of running in for that early pregame content stuff. So we'll make sure we do that here. So stay tuned this week. Last year in Indianapolis, we kept it simple. A block away from the stadium is a Hooters. There's so many different bars and restaurants that are in Indianapolis right by the stadium, but they get pretty packed. So yes, we could, we're not going to Kilroy's because that's an Indiana basketball bar. I refuse to do our meetup at Kilroy's. That's an IU bar down in Indianapolis. So then there's these other bars that are kind of in the area, but all the schools, kind of use those as like their meetups for their schools. So you got to kind of zig while everybody else is zagging. And Hooters was really great with us last year, giving us an entire section right by the bar and an ability to kind of spread out and have our whole crew together. So we might just run it back there because, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And let's keep those, as superstitious as I am, let's just keep the same vibes we had last year going and see if it finds our way to the same vibes we had last year in a Final Four. So, but stay tuned for those updates. I'll talk to Kraig and Joe about that privately, and we'll give you those updates here as the week rolls along. Chubbs82 finishing it up here with a $5 super chat. And he says, I will say this. I feel like Houston is going to choke. And I'll say this. Chubbs is just trying to do the reverse jinx because he sees the momentum starting to build for Purdue, and he knows how much crap he talks to me. And now all of a sudden, Purdue's in the Sweet 16. Now we wait for the rest of the Big Ten to join us. Big game for Illinois tomorrow night against Kentucky. Can they take down a blue blood and the Wildcats? You got your home crowd there. We'll see. We'll see. I'm rooting for the Big Ten. I'm rooting for every single team in the Big Ten. I hope all 8 make it and really make a statement to the rest of the NCAA, here this weekend. So we shall see. But appreciate everybody's super chats. Appreciate everybody's support. Everybody that tuned in here to a fun post-game show, a Sweet 16 bound edition of our Boilers in the Stands post-game show. Thank you to Kraig, who's walking the streets of Rhode Island, Providence. If you're out there, make sure you give him a big hug. Buy him a beer. Maybe he'll get you a beer. Who knows? But I know beers will be had while he enjoys the rest of college basketball as we are officially at halftime of the Arkansas St. John game. So we're going to get to that. Joe, any final thoughts for you in a big win and a big weekend for our Purdue Boilermakers in Rhode Island?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just the summary. We talked about the in-game stuff, and Purdue's going to have a tough battle in the Sweet 16 regardless, but they are in the Sweet 16 amidst all the ups and downs, at times looking like the best team in the Big Ten. They lose 6 of their last 9. They turn it around quickly, and you play who's in front of you. They took care of 2 teams that everybody was picking against. Everybody was picking the other team against Purdue. They took care of both teams and never really, neither game trailed in the second half, I believe. They took care of business, and that's exactly what you want. I know that we as fans and on the show, it's kind of I think a little bit of a sigh of relief of like, all right, not that the season is over, not that we expect Purdue to lose next game, but a little bit of an understanding of, all right, whatever here on out is kind of a little bit more of the icing on the cake. I also know that is not how Purdue players feel. Purdue players feel like, hey, we have to go win the Sweet 16. We have to go win the Elite 8 and head back to the Final Four because they have unfinished business, I bet, in their minds. So it is for us, I think, a little bit of a relief, but I know it is not for them. It is just another business trip, and now they get to head home to Indy Friday. Should be a fun game. Hopefully a good atmosphere Friday and Sunday for Purdue, and I am very excited. And just also shout out everybody that's tuned in. Appreciate everybody that has tuned in and has allowed us to do this. Kraig to get there. We'll be, like I said, me and Kraig will be, I believe, credentialed for Indy for Friday. Braggs has said he'll do his fan in the stands things, but wouldn't be possible without you guys supporting. So do genuinely appreciate that. Also shout out. I'm just going to shout out again my Feed the Post Substack and YouTube.
Yep. And make sure you're following all of Joe's content throughout the weekend. He does not just breakdowns for Purdue and everything that comes with that, but he breaks down every single matchup for all the Big Ten schools. So make sure you subscribe to the Feed the Post channel on YouTube. Make sure you hit him up on Twitter and follow at Joe Jackson CBB. And he does a lot of great breakdowns on there as well. So we appreciate you guys. A couple final thoughts from some of these guys that I thought had some good underlinings here, but Heather Garrison saying the IHSAA tournament is at Gamebridge on Saturday. So that is the reason why that Purdue gets bumped to Lucas Oil, and all of college basketball gets bumped to Lucas Oil. Crown Point is playing semi-state here today, my hometown. And then I also think the other aspect of it, as somebody said, and I think this is another good distinction, but somebody said, Chad P. says it does get loud, though, 70,000 versus 14,000 people. Well, it won't be completely 70,000 because, as we said, the stadium gets cut in half. But from a standpoint of buying tickets, when you are at Lucas Oil and there's a way bigger capacity than there probably would be at Gamebridge, it then makes the tickets a little more affordable to be able to get into the house. And you're going to have schools like Tennessee who are close by that will have an ability to, show up. And I'm sure all the schools will be well represented, but I'm sure Purdue will just completely be taking over that stadium. Another thing to note is when you're going into the stadium, make sure you're planning that out, because I can remember getting into Lucas Oil last year, or not Lucas Oil, getting into Gamebridge last year was a nightmare trying to get through the gates right before tip-off. But this will be at Lucas Oil, so it'll be a little different. And also, now that we're talking about this, because it's at Lucas Oil, we do probably have to think a little harder about exactly where our meetup is. It's still an easy walk from Hooters.
Yeah,
it's
10 minutes maybe.
Yeah, it's still an easy walk, but it's not the half a block that we were when it was at Gamebridge. So some things to think about, but all we're thinking about is a great game and a lot of fun here on a celebratory post-game show. And we appreciate all you guys here hanging out with us as well. So we appreciate you guys. Scott White coming in. Boilers in the stands is the greatest. Thank you, Joe, Kraig, and Braggs. Boiler up. Train rolls along. Purdue Boilermakers are in the Sweet 16 once again as we continue to live the golden era of Purdue men's basketball. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your college basketball. For Joe Jackson, for Kraig Bowers in Rhode Island, and for all of you here in the chat and everybody that's tuning in here later, Boiler up all day. Our Purdue Boilermakers are back in the Sweet 16. Let's go. See you here in a couple days. Stay tuned for updates. Boiler up.